We've all heard of the world's infamous prisons, Devil's Island, Alcatraz, Robben Island. But there's one notorious place you won't find on any map. It's known simply as Perm 36. Deep in the Ural Mountains, the most feared place in all of Russia. Danilo Shumuk knows why. With his family fearing the worst, he spent 42 years behind bars during Stalin's secret war. And it took a Canadian prime minister to rescue him. Tonight, the extraordinary story of the eternal prisoner.
Death often walked in circles around me, gazing into my eyes.
It was secretive, but there was more to it than that, I think. I think that it was the undeniable unfairness and brutality.
It's like family. You know, what would you do for your brother or your sister if they were in trouble, especially if their life is on the line?
It was a gripping story. There was something we could do about it.
Moscow. Today, it's a thriving, noisy metropolis of 11 million. But 1,200 kilometers to the east, there is a place of silence, where inmates were not allowed to speak above a whisper. It is the most feared place in all of Russia.
The old people, in some way, are still afraid because this trauma was so huge that they are still afraid. And the young people don't want really to know much about these things.
Perm 36, the last standing gulag from a network of hundreds of thousands of concentration camps created by the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin.
It was not allowed to speak about these things. It was silence.
Danilo Shumuk was 18 years old when he first disappeared in the gulags. A world away, his Canadian family feared the worst, including his great-nephew, Viktor Shumuk.
He was put in these, what were called strict regime labor camps, the highest level of punishment they could give an individual, you know, short of, you know, death.
His principal crime was his belief in his tradition and in his country and his nationality, and that his reward for that was a brutal imprisonment.
He was a Ukraine patriot. He was about 40 years in the camp.
So it's an apt phrase, the eternal prisoner.
It was as if freedom was something I could only dream about or read about in a fairy tale. The prison, with its harsh gray walls and monotonous surroundings, represented concrete reality.
Ну, главная цель таких мест – это, конечно, изоляция.
20 million perished in this secret war, waged by Stalin against his own people. Historian IRINA.
Во времена Сталина, я подчеркну, сталинского ГУЛАГа, достаточно было того, чтобы портрет, в газету с портретом Сталина что-нибудь завернуть, например, бутерброд или еще что-то. Вот это были причины для того, чтобы человека... И продумано здесь все было до мелочей. Ну вот 5 рубежей охранных, 5 охранных рубежей, 5 заборов. И, конечно, смысла не видели бросаться, что называется, грудью на амбразуру.
Fearing for his life, a family's solitary voice escalates into an international campaign to free the eternal prisoner.
It was not a thing that we could do alone.
From Parliament Hill, 27 official Canadian appeals failed to budge the Soviets. And then one man stood poised to break the impasse. Joe Clark.
I was the first Canadian foreign minister to visit the Soviet Union in 12 years. My interlocutor at the time was one of the most unforthcoming people in the world, Andrei Gromyko. What impressed me at the time was how skillful he was at trying to put me off balance. When we met, he said, oh, Mr. Clark, I've dealt with every Canadian foreign minister since Louis Saint Laurent, and that had been when I was about 10.
Behind closed doors, Clark could not crack the Soviet position. But in Ukraine, in front of a world audience, he got his moment.
I said to the Ukrainian leader, at this stage in our conversation in Canada, the journalists would leave. Thank you for allowing them in. And he said, I have nothing to hide. They can stay. And so I said, fine.
Wherever he went, Clark kept raising the subject of human rights, such as in Kiev with the Prime Minister of the Ukraine, where Clark complained about a jailed Ukrainian dissident.
We pushed it aggressively and made our case about Danilo Shumuk.
The Soviets did not like it.
It's ridiculous.
A cause célèbre resulted. I didn't set out to create it. I didn't orchestrate this. I went to make a case, and we suddenly had a breakthrough.
It took a decade of backstage lobbying from Clark and one very tense exchange between two world leaders on a public stage. But Danilo Shumuk was finally free, 42 years after he first disappeared behind the red curtain.
To the bottom of my soul, I am moved by the unanimous resolution of the Canadian Parliament calling on the government of the USSR to release me from captivity and allow me to immigrate to Canada to join my relatives.
On Easter Monday, 1987, he stepped onto the tarmac a free man. One of the last prisoners ever to leave Perm 36 before it closed its gates for the last time that very same year.
We didn't free multitudes, but we freed him.
Next, a hero of the Korean War, his fight against impossible odds.
Knowing someone's going to get hit, and then suddenly realizing, my God, it's us.